Alright, everyone, welcome to the Superhero Chronicles. And now it is time that we explore the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe, the very controversial DCEU, which has a very split audience that you either like what you're seeing or you don't like what you're seeing. I'm in the middle ground. There are things I like and things I don't like. And I think it's only fitting that we start off with the first official movie in the DCEU, being 2013's The Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, co-written by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer, starring what I think is it's an all-star cast, which is Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne, and Russell Crowe as Jor-El. So, when I first saw this movie when in 2013, I admit I really liked it a lot. I thought it was a fun movie. I thought the action was really cool. By this time, I was a really big fan of Zack Snyder. So because I love movies like 300 and Watchmen and stuff like that. So when I was watching Man of Steel, I was like, finally someone who understands comic books is making a superhero movie. And to Zack Snyder's credit, he actually converted me into a Superman fan. Not a diehard fan, but a fan nonetheless. I was always more of a Batman guy as opposed to a Superman guy. And to this day, I'm still a Batman guy over Superman. But because of the Man of Steel, I was converted and I kind of grown to appreciate Superman more. And I respect the character of Superman as a greater whole. Now, in the context of the movie, let's waste no time. Let's get down to business. I think it's only fitting that The Man of Steel, which is a very polarizing movie and really does have a split divide, I think in order to give it a fair shake, I do a pros and cons approach to get a better understanding of it. So let's get down to dirty deeds. Pro number one, the cast in this movie, as I said, is an all-star. Everyone turns in spectacular performances. Henry Cavill, to me, while he's no Christopher Reeve, in terms of a modern-day Superman, I can't think of anyone better. Henry Cavill is amazing as Superman. In costume, he looks fantastic. His Clark Kent needs a lot of work, and in certain aspects, his Superman needs a lot of work. But in terms of overall look and stature, and a couple of scenes where I think the script's actually allowing him to embody the character, I'm liking it, and I would like to see Cavill get a better script for a new movie, because he really, I think he has it in him, but he's being bombarded. But in the context of this movie, he was good with what he had to work with. Amy Adams plays Lois Lane, and this is one of the best interpretations of Lois Lane. This is more comic book Lois Lane. The snappy, quick-fire, take-no-shit reporter. And her and Superman, their development of their love interest, of their love story, was kind of spotty in areas. Could be done a little better, but whatever. But performance-wise, Amy Adams is really good. Michael Shannon as General Zod. I like Michael Shannon as an actor, and his General Zod, for the most part, is really good. But I'll be lying if I say that some of his delivery of his lines aren't intentionally funny, especially the infamous, "I will find him!" Yeah. Take that away, Michael Shannon does pull off a good Zod, and I actually like his version of Zod's motivations. Though I do think it's kind of a mess in certain areas, but I'll get to that. Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent. One phrase: who better than Kevin Costner to play Jonathan Kent? Enough said. Then we have Diane Lane as Martha Kent, and once again, who better than Diane Lane? I loved her as Martha Kent. She was great. I love the warmness she brings, and the genuine love she has for her son Clark. And that to me is where Henry Cavill's acting is actually shining, because I love the rapport that he and Martha have, and I also love the rapport that he and Kevin Costner are having. Even though it's that one little scene, which is the death of Jonathan Kent, I like what was going on with that. I'd like to have seen a little bit more of that. Well, that's neither here nor there. We have Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. It's Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne's good in anything he's in my opinion. And as Perry White, he was no different. Stellar. And then finally, we have Russell Crowe, who played Jor-El, and I love Russell Crowe as Jor-El. He was awesome, especially in the first 20 minutes when it takes place on Krypton. Which brings me to my next point. Krypton in this movie was done awesome. I love the look of Krypton. It looked so like interesting and so rich, and the wildlife of Krypton. It's like I want to know more about Krypton. I also want to know more about the relationship between Zod and Jor-El. Like they kind of hint at it, but they don't fully go into it, which I think is a real letdown because there's a lot of. I was more interested in knowing between what's happened with them than I am with Superman later on in the movie, because Jor-El and Zod and in the opening, they're just so like really solidly written, and I'd like to see more. Another thing I like this is the like I said, the action set pieces in this movie is great. This is the definitive Superman movie in terms of Superman actually doing things and actually fighting people and actually fighting and actually fighting. He's actually fighting. We get to see him go against like Zod's army, and they're kicking shop, they're kicking ass, wrecking all kinds of hell, and it looks awesome. The action in this movie is fantastic. I don't give a fuck. Testosterone filled to the max. I love it. And like I said, some of the relationships in this movie were done solidly well, and some were a little shaky, but they weren't enough to put a damper on my opinion. Um, Now let's get to the cons. The action. I know I just said that the action was really well done, but again, I think this movie's problem is that it focuses too much on the action and not enough on its characters. And that's why, to me, Superman as a character gets lost into the shuffle. Because Zack Snyder is more worried about creating action set pieces than he is about going to the character. And again, this is someone who is a Zack Snyder fan calling Zack Snyder out on his bullshit. But I'm I'm not a raging fanboy where I'm all like, Zack Snyder should die for what he's done. No, no, no. I think someone needs to sit Zack Snyder down and be like, look, you gotta pace yourself, all right? These scenes of talking, they're actually very important. It's called character development. And it makes the action scenes mean more because there's some juice behind them and not just there out of randomness. I think once someone gets into Zack Snyder's head, then I think, because to me, Snyder has it in him to make an awesome movie. Just look at Watchmen. Who cares if it's based on a graphic novel? It was well acted, well directed, and just well thought out. But we're not talking about Watchmen, we're talking about the Man of Steel. Which brings me to another point, which is the lack of depth, especially for adult Clark Kent. I don't know who he is, basically. I don't know who Clark is. Like, to me, there are certain scenes where, stuff is being explained to Clark, and he's not asking that magic question, which is why. There's one scene where Jor-El's subconscious is explaining to Clark about the history of Krypton and how it came to be, certain things like the colonization of Krypton and Krypton wanting to, and Krypton pretty much banning natural birth in terms of more like unnatural birthing. And not once did he say why. Why did they feel the need to do something like this? And to me, that's not good because I need to feel that Clark actually does care about these things, but because he's not really questioning things with follow-ups, I'm just scratching my head, being like, okay, I want to like you. I want to like you as a character, but you're not really saying much. Like I like you as a character already, but I want to like you further as a character, but I'm not really giving nothing because you're not really questioning things. And to me, that's a real big. To me, it's a problem. Like when certain characters don't question things that are being explained to them. Another con I have this movie is, well, I said, or in a lot of respects, the special effects in this movie look really, really, really cool and look really well done. There are also, but near the end scene where Zod and Superman are having their overblown, over-the-top battle through Metropolis, there are instances where the effects look straight out of a PS3, and it's really jarring to look at. and I don't care. It's kind of just ick. It's just ugh. I mean, like, there are also a lot of scenes where like the CG and the practical seamlessly go together and it looks great. But when you get too overblown with it, that's when it starts to look like you're watching a video game. That's a real big problem, especially for me, who doesn't really mind special effects. But if for 20 minutes I'm watching a video game play out, I got a problem with that. I need to see some real life in there. Some uh, another one of my main gripes I have is that this movie has way too many flashbacks. Being that this was co-written by Nolan and Goyer, the Batman Begins influence is seen throughout this film, and in Batman Begins it was done really really well. In this movie, yeah, a little shaky in some areas. Like I like the first couple of flashbacks where you see young Clark as a kid in school discovering for the first time that he has these powers. And I love when Martha Kent is called into school to try and calm him down, try to relax. That stuff I love. I like it a lot. I also love the scene with Jonathan Kent and Clark when Jonathan's like, maybe you should have let these kids die. And I also love the scene where he gives Clark the little speech of like, you were sent here for a reason, but somewhere out there you have another father, they give you another name. I love that. And Kevin Costner is putting on this is one of Kevin Costner's best performances in a very long time. He really nails Jonathan Kent down to the max. But, and of course, you have the scene where Jonathan Kent gets killed in the tornado and stuff like that. And again, these flashbacks are good, but I think you could have limited down them a little bit. Maybe you could have combined them. Maybe you could have combined these flashbacks instead of separating them too much, because it kind of disrupts the pace of the movie itself. Once you do another flashback cut, it's like, oh, you disrupt the flow or whatever. Like when the movie first starts, I get it. Nothing's really been established yet, but we're an hour in and we have more flashbacks. No, to me, it's kind of a problem. But now we get to my biggest criticism on this movie, and that is the climax. When all is said and done, Superman snaps Zod's neck and kills him. Of course, Zod had this thing called the World Engine. He was terraforming Earth to be Krypton, because Zod's whole thing is that Zod is a true Kryptonian. He wants his people to come back and shit like that. But Superman prevents it when he destroys the World Engine, and that leads to the whole knockdown, drag-out fight through Metropolis, where all the collateral damage happens and people are pretty much killed. Now we get to the scene where he snaps his neck. And at first, I was intrigued by it. I liked it. There's no follow-up to this, because the next scene, he's throwing a satellite out of the ground, and you got some army commander saying, "Oh, I think he's hot." Really? You snap the man's neck, and the next scene is like, "Oh, he's hot." Why would you even have him snap his neck if you're not going to have a follow-up as to why? What? Him doing a scream, him doing like a guttural scream, like being hugged by Lois, that means he's sorry for what he's done? No. You took a life, whether he was a monster or not, you took a life. Pay the consequences, or have a scene of the army, saying you took a life. What? I don't care. Do something. And this is where the big divide comes to me with this movie, because it does things really good, and then it does things that are stupid. And the climax to me is stupid. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't hate it because he snaps Zod's neck. I hate it because there's no appropriate follow-up. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Man of Steel. All in all, looking back on it, I still really like this movie. And I'm gonna give it the grade that I gave it when I first saw it. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, because at the end of the day, I still find it very enjoyable. The acting is still top notch in my opinion. The action set pieces, the ones that are done really really well, look fantastic. the character relationships, the ones that worked to me really, really work, and the ones that don't work to me, they have room to be improved because it wasn't horrible. It was just, lazily, sloppily done, in my opinion. But, so yeah, a solid 8 out of 10. Whoa. Well, again, that's my thoughts on the Man of Steel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time for the next installment as we witness a dawn of justice. Stay tuned.